First podcast in a while for me too. I'm a little bit rusty. You were saying this is your first one ever, which congratulations.
Thank you.
Happy to be your first. But yeah, it's been, I don't think I've done one in like 2 months, which is weird to me because it's like, it's not that long, but also I was doing one like 1 or 2 every week. So
okay.
Hopefully this doesn't drone on too long, but yeah, we were talking about when he came over, the shows are finally picking up. Like, because you do a lot of shows in the Village and at the Grizzly Pear, which I've done before. I do a lot of shows in Midtown. Is it, so like Midtown, it's starting, the tourists are starting to come back. They're like going into the hotels and they are just kind of wandering around the streets looking for stuff to do now that it's warmed up. Is it pretty much the same in the Village, same thing that's happening? Because I haven't done a show there since like before Omicron. Like, what's been going on down there? What has it been like?
Yeah, I mean, I was out of town for like the worst of Omicron, which was nice because I didn't have to like experience like Ghost Town Part 2.
Yeah.
Which was
weird.
I didn't need to go through that again, so I was happy to miss that. So, but even just like coming back, starting our show in January was just, we were canceling most weeks. If we got an audience, it was like 4 people.
Oh man.
So it's starting to pick up a little bit. We're getting more tourists, but it's definitely, you can still feel that it's everyone shaking the cobwebs off, and the weather is big affecting it. You know, we're still in March in New York where it's either snowing or it's 70 degrees out. So
that was this last Saturday was brutal. I guess like it's funny. I don't think people realize how often comedy shows in the city have almost nobody at them. Like everybody that would come, because when I used to run shows at Greenwich, there'd be like 6 people in the audience. They'd be like, "Oh, I don't know what happened. Must have been a bad night." And you're like, "Yeah, it was a bad. I don't know. We always have people, but it's like spoiler." Most shows don't have anyone at them.
You get private shows sometimes.
You do get private shows, and sometimes people love it. Like one of the best shows I ever did, I had 5 people because they were just like, they were into it. They were having fun. Like it was more of a conversation. But yeah, those ones in January are tough where it's like, well, you had 3 people and you got to cancel. You got to give them their money back. And then they just sat in the bar for 40 minutes and doing nothing. I always feel bad. So bad for them.
That's rough. But it's coming back. It's coming back. It's warming up. Come back.
It is. Thank God. I think this summer is going to be a lot of fun. I think a lot of people are going to come visit the city, and it's going to be a lot of like sold out shows, which, oh my God, I need after the last 2 years. That'd be so nice to get just a run of good shows, like every night you can record. But so you also do Burlesque. How have those shows been? Comparatively, and then we can get into like how you got into that stuff, but like, is it kind of the same situation for the most part?
Oh, I honestly have no idea. I really
okay.
When I came here, definitely switched my focus a lot harder on comedy over burlesque. Did an amount of burlesque shows like my first year here, and have just been pretty sheepish about trying to like break into the New York scene.
Sure.
Could definitely speak a lot more to like my experience back home where I was doing it a lot more consistently, but here there's just so many different venues and outlets for it, and it's been definitely interesting like trying to learn like how you actually like get into that. So the last show that I did was around like Christmas time in December, and I only did that one because I was part of a festival in Savannah where I met a couple other New York performers, and just like really last minute backstage at that show, someone was like, "Hey, who's got shows in New York? I'm gonna be in New York next week. I'm from Boston." And this other chick was like, "Oh, I need someone next week." And they're like, "Hell yeah." And then they figured out the time wasn't gonna work, and she was like, "Well, damn." Like, "Well, you're from New York. You want to do it?" I was like, "Okay, sure." I'm trying to like still get ready for this show that we're about to do, but that's amazing. Yeah.
That sounds very comedy-esque.
That
is some shit that would definitely happen to us, and it did. Like we talked about it with Gabe on that pod. Sometimes it's just like pop your head into the club from the other club, and be like, "Hey, you, come on, 8 minutes right now. Come on, dude, follow me," and it's just like, okay,
yeah,
and that's it.
I had no idea that it was in my head like. It's like burlesque in New York or like LA or like New Orleans or somewhere. I'm like, oh, there's got to be such like a feeding frenzy for people trying to get spots, and that was how I thought comedy worked too, where I was like, there's no way, like how do you even get on stage without really knowing someone, and didn't understand like, oh, people are like desperate to book people sometimes.
Yeah.
Like it's not like you're doing them a favor. Like they have a show that they need to fill a lineup, and like they just need a body at some point.
That is really interesting. I never would have guessed. And because I guess in my mind, like burlesque shows are like big. They happen in like, you know, you're watching like Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or whatever, and there's like a burlesque show, like the bar's packed out, like it's like an event sort of thing. I never really thought of burlesque as like something that would have a pseudo like open mic where it's just like, no, we really need people. Like, that's crazy.
Which is definitely, I'm like just learning this, like very much like had no idea until that moment of someone just like raising their hand and be like, who's got shows? And was just immediately answered with like a booking. And I was like, oh, I really thought that this was like, you got to submit a tape, you need like references.
Who needs an agent?
This is like college applications or something.
Oh,
and
man.
Like, no, it's very similar to comedy. Where they're like, no, we just like,
It's just a college application that just has a picture of your boobs and that's it. It's like, that's it. Oh, man. So you started in Georgia. Let's actually like, so how did you get into it in the first place?
Yeah, it's definitely been lifelong interest for sure.
Okay.
Like, it's definitely something I've always been very
like even
drawn
as like
to.
a kid, you were like, wow,
Honestly,
that looks cool. I want to do
before
that.
I even like had the language for what it was, have definitely always been aware of like as a little kid, always wanted like heels and like shiny stuff.
Okay.
It was like whatever Jessica Rabbit is.
There you go.
I want to be that. I don't know if she's a person or a bunny, but like
she's
I
a role
like
model
it.
either way.
She's fine. She's it. And like went through a phase where I was like drawing Betty Boop all the time. My parents were like, all right, we don't really know what to do with that.
No.
Glad you have a hobby, but it's really
right.
specifically this one like 1920s hot cartoon.
Yeah.
And was just,
how old were you when you were?
I was probably like 11 or 12 when I was like,
yeah. Hey, puberty's hard on all of us.
It was
so
just like, I don't know what to do with all this energy. I just really like boobs, like just really liked just, like anything like sparkly and shaking around. Like, okay, cool. Like I'm into this. So just, like always knew like there's some world that I like don't have access to, and then saw like Moulin Rouge and was like that, but that's like from a long time ago. So I still don't really know how I find this in like modern day.
Sure.
And in high school kind of came across, I don't even know how I came across it, but like just YouTube videos of like burlesque performances. And there's a fuck ton of them online. YouTube's full of like festival videos, which those are incredible because those are like the top of the top, like the people who are competing and doing like really old school professional classic burlesque and like the big fans and like they're really like bending over backwards, and it's really impressive stuff that I'll never have the
like high level dance.
Very high level, very especially like New Orleans is full of like the best festivals where it's just like that's just the whole culture there is just like extravagant. It's wonderful.
Not to mention that there's a strip club every other building. So
it's huge. Some place like that, and like saw like the height of it, but then also saw a lot of like amateur videos and people doing them. Again, similar to comedy of kind of like underground shows of like, oh, we're doing this in like a library after hours, or we're doing this in like an after hours coffee shop situation, and it'd be like, like women in like their 40s, you could tell like, oh, this is just like a mom, like this is just like a teacher, this is just like a regular lady who just at 9 p.m. on Thursday sometimes does this thing. She took one class, and you can like feel this like very fun energy off of them where you can see like this is the only thing like this that you do. You don't do anything even close to this in your normal life, and then here you are just like dancing like a Motley Crue song or something.
Sure,
Whatever like got them going as a teenager, and they're just doing it, and their husband's like yelling in the corner. So like seeing
any of them do you think have husbands that don't know they do this on the side?
I don't think so. It's a very spousal supportive situation.
That's good.
It's very cute, So just seeing both of those, like the juxtaposition and the similarities between them, was like, this is a fucking interesting world, and just was hooked from then. Was like obsessed with videos of that. Went to college and was like, I want to do this so badly. And I was in Chicago at the time, and finally found like some classes on like a class pass situation. And I was like, all right, this is it. I'm doing it. I'm taking a class, and I was foolish enough to tell my mom. Not a good idea.
You're from the South.
I'm from the South. They're not originally. They're from Connecticut, but they're still like Irish and Italian and Catholic. And
gotcha.
Not like super practicing Catholic. Like when you're raised that way in like the 60s.
So burlesque is what the lower class does.
It was definitely
sexual predators.
Not something you want to hear your teenage daughter doing.
Yeah. Wait. How old were you when you were in Chicago?
I was
18?
19 when I took that class.
Okay. I gotcha.
It was definitely aware of like, oh, this is young and like strange, but like I just really wanted to do it. I didn't want to keep it from her, so I was like, it's just a class. It's just like for kind of self-esteem and just exercise, and like it's just like silly and like there's a little recital at the end. Don't worry about it. I don't love that, but
it's funny. One of my friends from high school, like when she was 18 or 19, like got into like pole dancing. And she wasn't stripping. She was just like, nah, I like pole dancing. And all of us like, but it's that same like reaction in your gut where the initial thing is like, okay, that's weird. But then as you think about it, you're like, they're really she's just moving around on a pole. Like it's not that crazy. Like she's not doing.
All the time.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's them a hard
She's
time.
a regular old firefighter. That's how we think about her.
It is. I mean, it is just it's just dance. And I grew up dancing. I started dancing when I was like 2.5 or something. They put me in a ballet class and was like waddling around and stuff. Like always loved.
So this is your parents' fault.
This is my parents' fault. Like that they were surprised by this. Like guys. Look at my closet.
That's what we do on this podcast. People come and I tell them how it's their parents' fault. That whatever they do, it's always their parents' fault.
Everything is. But I definitely didn't tell my dad at that time. It was just like, all right, but like just wanted to be able to share with my mom what was going on. She was like, fine. And truly, I went to that first class, and it is like one of the strongest memories in my head of like I hadn't been in a dance class in like 5 or 6 years at that point, like grew up doing it like all the time. And then by high school, which just like didn't have money for it and started doing like high school theater and like really missed it. And like that first day of like stepping into a studio and seeing like the mirrors and like the bar and like just that energy, fully like missed my bus getting back. It was like, I'll just walk. And it was an 1.5-hour walk in pouring rain. And I was
Chicago.
Like fucking dancing. I was like, I'm on like cloud 9. People were like, what is wrong with her? I was like, I just came from a dance class. And, like, so from then I was like, this is it. Like I'm obsessed with this. I love this so much. Was easily the youngest person in the class, which floored me. Everyone else was like 40 and above.
Yeah.
Like moms, grandmothers, like getting it back for themselves. It was like really, so again, was just like so hooked on this world of like, who are you women? Like what is going on with you that you signed up for this class? That's so cool that you're here doing this class right now.
Yeah. They were probably thinking the same thing with you.
Yeah,
they were like, oh, look at this young person trying to figure themselves out and like do something they love doing. That's awesome. That's a good, so I guess like going back to what you were saying earlier about just like the like quote unquote like open mic burlesque. I never quite understood with comedy, like, because these people would just be like walking around and be like, hey, you guys want to see a comedy show? And they'd be like, yeah, sure, fuck it, whatever. But like you saying that, I was like, oh, that's the same thing. Because if somebody popped out of a coffee shop and was like, hey, we got a burlesque show back here, it's like $5, you want to see it? I'd be like, yeah, I'll poke my head in, sure, why not? Like it seems like the exact same sort of feeling. And it's just like, expectations are like, I don't know, I'm just here to see what happens.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah, the whole thing is wild. So you were in Chicago. You went to school there, right?
I went to school there for 2 years, and I did that fall and was like obsessed with it. Did our little recital, was like, yep, I'm doing this forever. That was at Vaudzilla in Chicago, which is still there. It's a really great group of people. I think they changed theaters, but Vaudzilla as a group is fantastic. Check them out if you're in Chicago. Love that, and then really didn't have like the money to get back into it for the rest of that time. And then ran out of even more money. My family was like, you have to come back to Georgia. I don't know why we sent you to a liberal arts school in Chicago.
Oh, which one?
Yeah. It was DePaul University in Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. I applied there. I thought about going, and then it's too expensive.
It's
very expensive.
It's expensive. I got that scholarship, but still.
Yeah.
It was not enough scholarship. So came back to Georgia, and then like we just didn't have money for school. It was just like my grandfather was going through some stuff where like they really need some like caretaker at home to like kind of help out, and was like, okay, I don't know what to do with it. So like had to take a year off of school. It was just like, we can't do school right now. And like missed the application date to like go to UGA anyway. It was like, okay, well, too bad. Like you're just gonna work at the Olive Garden for a year. So I was doing that. I was like, I'm gonna fucking kill myself if I don't find something to do. Cause like I would spend all day working at Olive Garden and then come home and like just be with my family. Yeah. After like 2 years of being alone in the city, which was like, oh god.
Especially in your early 20s.
Yeah, it was, I felt very trapped. It was just like, I need some kind of creative outlet. And just went to, just like Googled like burlesque in Athens, and there were like 3 troupes in our tiny little town. Was like blown away by that. So I had like options, and then just went to the first group that was having a show and was like, fell in love with it. It was really just like wacky and weird and like ragtag, but like glamorous still. And it's just like, I want whatever that shit is.
They're just having fun.
They were having so much fun. So much fun. And just emailed the troupe and was like, hi, I'm Dom and 19. Can I be in your thing? And they're like, sure. Come to a meeting. We got one on Sunday. Showed up late because I'm late for everything. They're like, whatever, sit down. Just don't sit, just sit. And I'm like, okay. And it was truly, it felt like joining like a carnival group. They were so just weird and fun and like immediately just took me in, and like I don't think I spoke for like a year, was just always observing.
Wow, okay.
Party people. They were called the Effie's Club Volleys. I think they still do stuff in Athens. At that point, they were like going on like 10 years of being a troupe together. Oh wow. So they've been, kind of long-standing. They were named after like an old whorehouse in Athens or something.
Excellent.
Like, we're taking that. That's funny. That's a fun time. And just again, an incredible group of women who, it was just like a fun hobby for them. They were like professors at the university. They were like graphic designers, moms, and like teachers and stuff. And that was just always one of my favorite things about it, is that this is such like a superhero double life for so many people. And it's just so fun seeing that magic of, someone who is like, this is not what I normally do, but like come to life on stage. You're like, that's a different person that's happening up there. Because I'm in the meetings with you every week, and you're so quiet and like shy, like in your little shell. And then even when we're rehearsing, I would get so nervous and be like, I don't know about this. I don't know, you look pretty, I don't think this is gonna, like, there's one woman every single time she rehearsed would have her eyes fully closed.
Wow.
We would just do it in this like little studio that we rented on Sundays, and we would like perform in front of each other, like leading up to the shows, and she would do the whole thing, like eyes, not even just to the ground, like closed, and would like mark through her thing. We'd be like, yeah, it looks great. Probably open your eyes though, like really. And then, like, but stage, like once it came to the show, she was there and she already lit up, but like just for those 2 minutes. And as soon as she came down, she's like, oh, and you're like, what is that? That's crazy that you can do this. Like this is easily one of the scariest things a person can do, and you get up and do it despite being such a snail beyond that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we both know a bunch of people like that in comedy where it's just like, it's sitting around a table, they are not charismatic, they like cannot hold a conversation. Then you get on stage, you're like, God damn it, you're really funny. Like, oh, okay, this is the one thing that they're like expressing themselves doing. So that's really interesting that it happens in both. Was there like a noticeable difference between the burlesque that you did in Chicago versus in Georgia, in the South? Is there like, I don't know if this is the right word, but like dialects of it, like different styles?
For sure. Okay. Definitely. Outside of even like just burlesque has so many different like categories like that. Athens itself is like a weird kooky town.
Okay.
In Georgia, it's like 40 minutes.
That's where the university is,
It's where the university is. So you got a lot of students, and it's like a weird like conglomeration of like old money Southerners and then like weird music students.
Okay.
That are always just kind of like trying to cohabitate in this little town.
It's like a tension.
And so I think it really kind of pushes the creatives to be even like weirder than they maybe would other places. And so that's where you get like an REM or like a Nutribulk Hotel. Like that's where those guys came up from, where it's just like, so it's a big music town, and it like really, I think, pushes like the quirky weirdness, because I think there's like such a maybe subconscious rebellion against the other kind of traditional Southern culture surrounding that. So Athens has just a very weird, unique strangeness to it on its own that definitely helps color our troupe. Beyond that, burlesque is just like comedy, where it has very different niches and scenes, and so you can have classic burlesque, which is what most people I think of when they think of burlesque, where it's very tassels and fans, and it's very big budget and very Vegas and very old Hollywood, and it's a lot of
that's exactly what pops into my head.
Yeah, most places don't have the money for that. That's just not happening. Maybe a couple Vegas, you're gonna find that, LA, New Orleans. I mean, honestly, even here, we've got like some beautiful showrooms, like the Slipper Room and like the Box and stuff are like beautiful, and there's definitely like money put into them, and like their acts are like gorgeous and everything, but still, you can definitely still feel like that New York grittiness to a lot of the acts. You're like, oh, but like she fucking cut me. Like she's dancing and stuff, but like
she grew up in the Bronx.
Step on my face.
We do not fuck with her. This is okay.
So
that's
funny.
Every
town has its own. This is our town's version of this, and beyond that, yeah, there's classical, there's neoclassical, which kind of like strays from like those norms a little bit. Dirty Martini here in New York definitely helped in the 90s, early 2000s build up like a very like neo-burlesque, like again, just getting like weird and kind of like trying to break from those norms. She definitely has a plus size body that was not welcome in the scene before. She just was like, well, I'll just make my own scene, like fuck that. So definitely like newer burlesque is a lot of like trying to break those boundaries with like body size and like racial discrimination and stuff, where it's like a lot of different, people who look different weren't very welcome in this scene for like a long time. So, and beyond that, there's weird, like I really like to do like comedy kind of style and just be like just silly with it and just be like anti-sexy. And you're like, okay, I just want to like ruin people's nights now. Like, it's just really fun, just like just being like going the other way that people don't expect you to go with it.
Okay, so is that like New York, LA, Vegas, is there like differences between Chicago and Athens specifically? Like, I mean, you pointed out how it's weird. I guess I'm thinking about Chicago, having spent a lot of time there, is like, you've kind of got like the reservedness of the Midwest. Like anything that has to do with sex in the Midwest is not talked about. Like if you were to ask me, like, for instance, my hometown's like 300,000 people. I could not tell you if there's a burlesque show there or not. Like, I couldn't tell you where anything sexual is in that town because it was like, we do not talk about those things. I'm assuming the South is a little bit like that, but in a different way, right? Like, I don't know. Am I reaching too much on this, or?
No, I think that's definitely why it is such a fun, liberating thing for a lot of people in the South, where it is like, oh, I wasn't allowed to do this other places growing up. And like, there's not other outlets for this necessarily, to where it is like, you can definitely feel, like how it is just such a release and such a thing of like taking agency for yourself there. But that was definitely a big part of it for me. And when I did tell my parents that it was something I was doing, that they were just like, oh, we hate this. They really, really were not, and still are not on board. Like, we just... Still
not on board?
No, still not, no.
Do they like comedy more?
They like comedy more just because, we can talk about that at least. It's like, all right, you can like tell people you're doing this, but...
Gotcha.
It is very much like the family secret. We haven't I haven't directly spoken to my dad about it since I told him when I was 21. So that was like 6 years ago or so, and he was like, "Just never bring this up with me again." Like,
so I will do some targeted advertising for your hometown in Georgia.
Which I get. I mean, I think, again, I was 21, which in my head I was like, I'm gonna wait until I'm 21 to tell them that I'm doing this, but then I'm like a full grown up, and they can't tell me no.
Yeah, right.
And now I like look at like 21-year-olds, I'm like, oh, I get why they were very horrified by this. Like, you still look 12, and like.
Yeah, it's
definitely.
That was it's interesting. Obviously, I don't have any kids, but I could definitely see how it's just like, wait, you're doing what with who? Like, what's going on here? And I think that's, I could see where parents would, especially parents in non-liberal areas, like the East Coast parents that I've met, do not give a single shit about any of this stuff. But it's a little touchier. I think where both of us are from. And
again, I mean, I think just burlesque is such like a kind of loose concept, and like something that most people aren't really considering, like, what is that when they hear it, they're just like, we just know it's like fancy stripping, more or less. So they just assume it's stripping for the most part.
Yeah.
And there is that element to it, but it was just, I did my best to try to explain, like, no, it's like about like the artistry and like the agency that you have over your body, and like, it's not sexy. Like, come do a show. Like, I told them to come. I was like, I'm not embarrassed by what I'm doing. Like, you've seen this body, probably not recently, but like, you guys have known me since I was a baby. Like, I have no shame about like what's going on here and like what I'm doing. Like, I wouldn't tell you to come see something that I was like, this is shameful, this is bad. Like that's like the whole
Right.
point of it is like, oh, this like there's nothing to like be embarrassed about with our bodies. And like the thing is, when you go to a show, it's act after act after act of end goal is they're naked, more or less.
Right.
And like you see 15 bodies in a row, it stops being like special. It stops being like,
Right.
oh, there's more boobs.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, it's gonna be boobs almost every time.
Lot of boobs.
It's not, it's like coming to a comedy show and be like, they did a punchline. You're like, yeah. It was the whole point was, yeah, we knew we were getting there. It was like, what if we listened to like, you know, no one's getting so distracted by the punchline that they're not listening to the content itself. Where it's the same at a burlesque show, where it's like no one who's there to be there is like so gobsmacked by bodies that like they're missing the performance. Where like it really does just become about like, oh, now I can like focus on like your act and like what the concept was here and like the design of like your.
It'd be like going to a football game and being surprised every time they hit each other.
Pretty much,
You're like, he just hit that guy, and you're like, yeah, man, that's what they do.
That's
like,
not what we're looking for.
No. We're looking at the play structure. I want to know the read that the quarterback made. Yeah, no, it's that is an interesting way to look at it. What are the audiences like? And if you can break it down to like regionally, like who's going to see these shows in the places that you've done these shows?
Yeah, again, I really only did that one class in Chicago, so I can't, I don't have like a lot to speak on with their scene necessarily. In Athens, it was very much, this is like friends and family. Like it was like husbands and like whoever from like your book club you could get to go.
Sure.
And we would go out like flyering like the day, like a couple days before, we like put on our wigs and stuff and like run around to bars and stuff. So we get people that way. And yeah, it was just like a lot of people who were just like, we filled it with a lot of our friends and a lot of like the community like surrounding, like so like we would go to like other people's burlesque shows, like the other troops, and like we were very close with like the drag community there, so we would go to their shows, they would come to our shows. Definitely a lot of just like mutual support within that kind of like quirky weird performance group. And then just a lot of people were just kind of like curious and just wanted like a fun like girls night or like a fun safe way to celebrate your birthday without going to like a real strip club.
Bachelorette parties,
a lot of
like
bachelorette stuff like that, especially New York, you get like a lot of birthdays, a lot of bachelorettes. It's both places, in my experience, it's a lot of women. It's a lot of just women who are like, I want to have like the fun of like a sexy night without being like objectified all night.
Sure.
And this is like a fun venue where you can go and be like dressed up and stuff and be like, you know, woohooing with your girlfriends without people being like, I'm gay. Like, well, now it's not fun because like you're gross.
Right.
So it's a lot of that, where that's a thing where like I just really wish my folks could have come to see what the room was like, because they were picturing like skeevy guys just like getting off to it. I'm like, they can go to a normal strip club.
That's what happens at comedy clubs. They're backwards.
There it's kind of creepy.
Comedy clubs is where you get the skeevy guys that are objectifying the women.
I've never had weird issues after Burlesque show. No one's been creepy, but comedy rooms. Like
comedy rooms.
That joke. Like, how do I? I'm like, nah, I don't. I'm not here to talk to you.
Oh,
big
man.
Time. Big time. It's definitely, where, it's a very respectful community. It's very supportive. And it's just, I just love the community that it brings. It's a lot of just really cool, just feminist people who are like, we're just gonna like handle ourselves that there's boobies. We're not gonna like fucking freak out. We're gonna freak out in like a fun way that's supportive. It's like, oh, but this is fun.
That's great.
We can all just be excited about boobies.
Leave it to the ladies to figure out how to be supportive. We're not very good at that on this side of the gender spectrum.
But it's, they're a blast. It's so, that's definitely a big part of what I do, is I just love talking to people afterwards and just how hyped they get about it. Of just like, especially people who've never seen one. I love seeing people who like, that's their first time, they're like just mind blown. They're like, I didn't even know this existed. Like, I didn't know that like you could have sexuality like this in this like fun way and in this, safe, consensual, like everyone's here with like a common goal of like fun and not like it's just so much fun to bring people to their first show and be like, I had no idea that this is like what this was, where people have really preconceived notions about it and then they see a show and they're like, oh, this is just wacky. Like, this isn't a sexy, it can be, but like it's definitely, especially a lot of like the newer stuff, is just like, oh, it's silly, like there's pies going around, people are just, it's very slapstick, it's very like akin to like clowning, honestly. Especially like the kind that I do. Like I would often, I was like a student at the time in Athens when I was part of that troupe, so I was always like really kind of like just getting through stuff. I was just like, oh
Sure.
fuck, I have a number to do, and like wouldn't be like super prepared on like the dance side of it. So I'd be like, I'm gonna compensate with a lot of just like big expressions
Yeah.
and just like making like wacky faces.
There you go.
And that just kind of became my thing of like, oh, okay, that's like people respond to that, and like it's just very physical comedy. It's very
Okay, so let's get into that. I mean, like, how do you decide what your, and you know, if this isn't the right like phrase, but your quote unquote like set is, like, how do you decide what song to pick? Like, how do you decide what moves to do with each song? Like, are you planning this out? Are you working on like one song for like months at a time? Do you like get into like, how do you actually build this thing?
Yeah. So I was really lucky with my troupe in Athens. We always had a theme for the show. We would do like 2 or 3 shows a year, and we would pick like a pretty like overarching like broad theme of like TV or like movies. Like my first one that I hopped on in was like a history. Like then people started doing like future stuff. So they're like, well,
So you have like a powdered wig while
through
you're
time and space. I did.
dance
Yeah,
around with your shirt off.
I full ass wore like a full, you know, like a gray haired lady wig because I wanted
That's
to
so
be
good.
Madame Curie.
Okay.
Because like not enough people know who she is, and she's a badass. She's the mother of radioactivity.
I was like, give the 10 seconds.
She was incredible scientist. She's figured out X-rays. She was out there on the field during wars, like X-raying soldiers up and be like, here's what's wrong. We can see inside your bones now. And you're like, what? And she was like, I'm a superhero. And you're like, well, calm down. She was like a little kooky. Like she was just super passionate about science, would full on like keep a little like radium like near her chest all the time because it was like brand new. They were like still figuring
I was gonna say that probably didn't work
she
out
full
for her
on
long
like
term.
killed herself trying to figure out like what radium was all about, and like
Oops.
we have a lot of stuff because of her. She's super cool.
Great.
And was just like, I'm gonna do a number about her because she's cool.
That's awesome.
So it was like weird stuff like that where it's like, that's not what people think of when they're like, you're like stripping, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm dressed as like an old scientist. Like,
So you get like a month, you get like 2 weeks. Like, how do you
usually,
plan that
have
out?
like about like 3 months or so, 3 to 4
Oh,
months
okay.
or so, of like knowing that that's what we were doing. We check in every week and be like, here are my ideas and stuff. But yeah, for me, it was often like it would be pulled from like whatever theme we were doing. And I was just always listening and still listen to like, if I hear a song and I'm like, that's like an explosive song, I want to do a number to that. For me, it was always, I'm a little diva, and I always wanted to be like at the end of like
Sure.
the act or whatever. And it
Yeah.
was like, how do I make sure no one can follow my thing? Because I have to pick a big enough song that you're like, well,
Yeah.
all right, fucking that's annoying. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
we don't want to go after you because like and other women had like a lot of like, they would do like really like sad stuff or like very like serious stuff. So we had like a real like ebb and flow of like energy throughout the show.
So it'd be like almost like, I'm picturing with a sad song that have to do like some sort of interpretive sort of dance
Definitely,
as opposed to the traditional, like going back to what you said about everybody thinks Vegas. Like
Yeah.
I could never picture that in my mind with a sad song.
Yeah, it was really interesting to see everyone's different approach to, you know, what kind of energy they want to bring up there. And there were some, I mean, I've cried at burlesque numbers before, just like, oh, you're really hitting on something like deep and
I thought you were
heavy
gonna
and-
say, "Oh, you're really hideous." I just like, I'm sobbing right now. This is the worst thing
Honestly,
I've ever
I would
seen.
love
No,
that.
I'm kidding.
I love ugly burlesque. I love people coming
Yeah?
out with like weird shit. Like
Okay.
I've seen some crazy stuff. There's this woman, I don't even know where it was or what it was, but I saw a clip of someone. She had like baby doll arms, like attached to her body, and like
Wow.
on puppet strings. So she was like moving all these little like arms like they were udders, and it was incredible. Like people are doing weird stuff with
Yeah.
this, and it's just there's no other venue for that. Like even in comedy, it's like
Yeah.
you get like the weird, you know, like off, you know, underground weird shit with
Sure.
comedy, but like
Yeah.
when
The
it's
naked
mixed
show. I don't know
with-
if you were doing comedy when that was like
I've
going
heard about
on.
it. Yeah, would love
That
to
was.
do it.
I've seen a couple comedians direct assholes. Just you know, it just sometimes it happens, and it's like I think I'm like you. I would always rather see something weird and interesting than like tame. So it's
Yeah.
like even if I'm not like, oh my god, that was hilarious, I still leave there and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna remember that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's what I want to meet people with. I love it, and that really is to me. That's like the heart of burlesque, because like historically, it really came from. It's been around for like centuries. It was
sure.
like
Well, I
probably
assume there's always been variations of people getting naked and dancing in front of other people, but
like the
the
concept
style,
of like
yeah.
burlesque specifically, it was probably like late 1800s, and it was
Okay.
people being like, oh, what if like we don't really have like the budget to do a full opera, but what if we do like a silly opera,
Oh,
and
cool.
would take like the high art of like opera or like Shakespeare and stuff and be like, we're gonna do like those shows but with like silly, like be very crass, and it was like really to
Yeah.
like make fun of the upper class and be like, you guys are fucking dummies, like you look stupid, you're not better than us, we're gonna do your fancy show, but we're gonna do it with our butts out. And it's like, that's
Yeah.
so funny. That's so
Yeah.
cool that they were like, yeah, we're gonna do it, but we're gonna be like smashing tomatoes in each other's faces. Like they were doing like just weird shit to just be like, fuck you with all your money.
Yeah.
Like we're funny, and that's like, yeah, that's cool as fuck. And it just kind of developed into like, oh, this is its own art form now. It's like we're making these like shows that were like making a mockery of like, you know, just like ridiculous stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like what you just described feels like very similar to what you'd see at like a Renaissance fair. It's like, I don't know if you've ever been to one before. Have you ever been to a Renaissance fair before? Okay, I feel like you would like it. It's like, it's exactly that. It's just like they put a bunch of old style buildings in a field, and then like it's a bunch of shows. Like people, you know, doing these crazy act outs and acrobatics, and there's like comedy shows and stuff like that. And it's all just like, they'll do like versions of like Drunk Shakespeare and stuff like that, which like the Drunk Shakespeare show in New York is actually a lot of fun too. But yeah, I'm with you. I love that, like, hey, not everything's so serious. Like let's have some fun with this. Like let's just jab a little bit at the people who think they're like highfalutin.
Yeah. No, it's a great time. It's very, just so much variety comes out of these performances where you're just like, I would have never thought to do an alien number, and just have seen like
An
full
alien number?
like movie like or Predator, whatever one has like that big ass head guy.
Alien, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a woman strip while, and it's a huge head she had on.
Yeah.
I mean, just the neck strength to do that is impressive. So that's the thing where it's like that's happening, and like all you can talk about is the boobies. Like you're an idiot. Like that's just,
Yeah.
it was hardly about that.
Hey, don't kink shame.
Yes.
People might really like that one. And
I think
like,
she might have had 3 boobs on for that one actually.
3 boobs? That's okay. That's
She's
very
alive for it.
Futurama. I like
Very
that.
fun. Yeah. But that's the thing. I mean, definitely like the nudity is a part of it, but it's definitely not the whole of it by any means. But it is definitely a key part of it, though. That was the thing. My folks were like, well, why can't you just do like weird performance art with your clothes on? Like,
Right.
why do you have to get all the way so naked? And I was like, I don't know, because like that, because like why are you so upset about that? And like
Yeah.
I don't want people to be so upset about that, and like to see that as such like a shameful, like dirty,
Yes.
you know, like lower class thing or something. Of like, no, like this can be like high art, and like it is just like how we all are. And that's like the fun thing about, yeah, like seeing a show. And there's such, again, a variety of bodies nowadays in it, and like in neo troops where like, yeah, everyone come do this, that like you get to see so many different bodies and be like, that's awesome. Like I look nothing like that, and I'm so excited that you're willing to like share what you look like with all of us, and we all get to like appreciate everything about you. I was definitely hooked. One of my first meetings, like a bigger woman was like, they had just gotten pictures back from their last show. She was like, hey, I just like want to make a note though, next time we have a photographer, could we reach out and let them know to not edit us before sending the pictures to us? Because I want my roles. Like they kind of like brushed me up, and like, you know, that's nice that they like wanted to do that for me, but like I don't do this to like cover this up. Like that's the whole point of this, is that like I'm like taking this off and I'm like, look at like what my body looks like, and like, you know, I like the raw pictures, and I was like, that's really cool. Like that's really, really impressive.
I mean, there's kind of the same thing going on with like stripping right now, of just like there's this whole feminist movement of like, no, this is my body, and like I shouldn't feel shame about it, and I should be able to do this and be a sexual object and not have, you know, people judge me for it. So it's I guess I didn't think about it going into burlesque, but it makes a lot of sense that like the two art forms would be kind of in lockstep with that. And then I'm assuming drag is like a similar attitude throughout the entire thing, right? Like different art form, obviously, but I guess how much do you know about that? Do you know if they are kind of going about all this the same way, and how they build their sets, and like
Definitely.
that.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a lot of like overlap between like the drag and the burlesque community for sure. And they've definitely, seen their own struggles with like a real praise of like thin white bodies. And like there's a lot of like, body dysmorphia, especially in drag, I think a lot. Cause like you're already going through like so much of like, you're changing yourself in so many ways to then have those added pressures of like, what is like a woman supposed to look like when you're doing like female drag. And really really love anytime that I do get to get ready backstage with drag performers and drag queens. Like probably like last summer or so, I was getting ready with this one queen who was like struggling to get her nails on. She was like trying to put like big ass fake nails on. She's like, I can't do it. Like they're not staying. Like I look stupid now. It's like, take them off. Like fuck that. She's like, but I want to look like a woman. I was like, look at my nails. Like I'm a woman. And like that's not what my nails look like. This can be whatever you want it to be. And like the light that went off in her head of like, oh fuck. And I was like, some women have short nails. Like some women got dirty nails. Like fucking do whatever you want. It's like, this is your drag. This is your, set. This is whatever you want it to be. Like it doesn't have to fit into like this box. So I think, like all of these art forms are like definitely slowly but surely making their waves of like, we're like, I'm done with that. Like we're not fucking about with that. I don't do corsets if I can help it.
Okay.
Very like traditional classic thing, but like they suck. Like they're so tight.
They don't look comfortable.
If you're gonna wear one though, don't let some girl that's like mad at you lace you up. I had a girl who was like not happy with me lacing up one time. Oh my god, she was like, "You're not getting out of this shit," and like, really laced me in there.
Looking like Keira Knightley in Pirates of the Caribbean.
She got me. You can really punish people with those, so be careful with them. But it's fun just seeing people do their own thing with it and really redefine like what it can all mean. It's a blast.
Yeah, it does make sense that like something that is outwardly, I guess in the past, it's interesting to me that something that was so outwardly body positive in one way was so body negative in another way. And like there was like a hard line between like, no, you're allowed to be positive about your body, but you're not.
Yeah.
But now like that seems to be, from what you said, shifting. How far has that gone? Like, are there men now doing burlesque? Are there trans people? Like, what is that? How many are doing it now? Is it something that's like really catching on with especially younger people or older people, or like what does that change like?
Oh, big time. I think since I've like took notice of it like in high school, so it's been like 10 years now of me like watching the scene and like really being interested in it. I think like right around when I started to take notice of it was when like a lot of people started being like, you know what, like we're getting into this, like this is like I'm done waiting around for like my turn, like I'm signing up. So like you do just see like a lot of older women, a lot of bigger women, a lot of trans individuals who are just like, you know what, the world's ending, I'm fucking not gonna be stressed about do people like my belly, like we're fucking done. So it's been really fun to watch like how much it's grown and how many more people are interested in it. It's definitely still very ragtag and independent, which is something I love about it. That it is very like, there's no money in this. There's no money
in comedy either.
There's no money in
comedy. It blows people's mind when they're like, do you get paid for this? We're like, no. And they're like, but do you want to get paid? I'm like, 100%. I do want to get paid.
Would
it's
love
just
if
like,
there was just money.
Your tickets were 2 for 1. You paid $5 for both. What money do you think I'm getting?
Who do you think is not? There are no grants for this stuff.
No.
There's no. So it's very community driven. It's very just like people who just want this to stay alive, just like desperately keeping the house put together. And just like you're just paying each other whatever you can, and just.
Is it getting more popular now that because I do feel like comedy is getting more popular because more people are taking, well, one, the internet, but then 2, more people are taking that attitude of like, fuck it, the world's ending, who cares? I'm just gonna like go do this. Or is it, I don't know, how popular, I'm assuming burlesque goes in waves, kind of like comedy does in terms of how popular it was. Like, do you know the historical timeline for like when it was really big and when it kind of went away, or is that not really a thing with burlesque?
Oh yeah, I mean like long term, I mean again, like, it was definitely like a part of like high, like theater and stuff like that back in like way back in the day.
Sure. In
like the 20s or so, it started to like kind of come back to a degree where it was just like, oh, we want to like entertain the troops and stuff, and like we want, and or before that, I guess it was like we've all got like money all of a sudden, like we're all excited, we're flapping around, Josephine Baker was huge. She was like the Beyonce of her time.
Oh wow.
Like millions upon millions upon millions of dollars.
Burlesque dancer.
Technically, sort of. She was more just like a general like showgirl.
Okay.
She's the woman that like had that banana skirt that you've seen before.
Ah, yep.
And she was like kind of like really blew up like the Charleston like
Okay.
loopy leg dance and
Yeah.
stuff. And you're like, what is this?
Yeah, right. That's illegal.
Yeah. And look at all this ankle happening. Like it was just.
I like it too much.
So
I
it's
can't
just,
have
like,
that.
Trailblazing women like that who really kept it alive and were like, this is fun. Like we're putting rhinestones and shaking around and you're gonna pay us for it. So it was like you could make money doing it then, and then yeah, just kind of like, you know, with everything else died around, you know, like the 30s and 40s when it was like we don't have money for anything.
Sure.
But yeah, kind of like 40s became like, you know, like pinups were really big because again they were like, we gotta keep the troops horny and wanting to do jobs for us. So
we gotta remind the troops they gotta kill for these
what are they
bitches.
fighting for?
Yeah.
If not the titties.
These
Like,
titties.
all right, let's do it. So it's, you know, your patriotic duty to get out there and keep them fighting for something.
Everyone plays a role.
So yeah, and then like definitely like 60s, 70s, it became more of like, because like the Hays Code kicked in like the 50s where like they were like, oh, we have to care about families all of a sudden. Like you can't say bad words, you can't have like low necklines.
And comedy got affected by that too.
So yeah, big time. So everything, yeah, like again, went underground and you got like your strip clubs, and then it was kind of like there were strip clubs and there were burlesque clubs where it was like, oh, strip clubs, they're like fully taking stuff off. And you like really have to be like, that's the seedy underbelly of society. So if you wanted to like get a taste of that, you could go to a burlesque club where it's like, oh, we keep some things on, but we're really shaking around with like what we do have on. So that was like your like kind of like slip into like, okay, I'm not going to a strip club, I'm going to a burlesque club. This is different. We're like, no, it's not. But then yeah, so it's had a real journey of just being like high art to like, this is like the
smut.
Yeah.
Yeah. So who, like, is there anyone who's like really big right now? Like who, because people ask us all the time, like, who are your favorite comedians? And almost always we say a bunch of comedians they've never heard of before. So like, but we always like, well, Chappelle's great, but like really these are our favorite. Are there burlesque dancers that like, I would assume if there was someone as big as Chappelle, I would know about them, but maybe I'm wrong. Like, is there sort of like a hierarchy, kind of like there is in comedy?
I don't know about hierarchy, but definitely the go-to modern day right now is Dita Von Teese.
Okay.
Who I think if I showed you a picture, you'd probably recognize.
That's very possible.
She's like commercials for like perfumes, probably. I assume,
okay.
Like lipstick and stuff. She's a very like classic, pale face, thin but like hourglass body. Does all the very classic like rhinestones to, you know, the gods and just like sitting in champagne glasses type stuff. She's definitely like the biggest name I think in like contemporary burlesque. But it's definitely not terribly representative of like, that's the thing, like people like hear burlesque and they're like, oh, like Dita Von Teese, and be like, no, like that, but with no money.
Yeah.
Like, no money. Like,
yeah.
Where she has money. Like she's doing some incredible shows. She tours and does like Vegas and LA and stuff. Here, my biggest idol is definitely Dirty Martini. I've mentioned already, because she just really, again, is like a huge reason why in like the late 90s, like this all came back. And she was like, I listened to her do a podcast actually recently about like her experience with it, and she was explaining how she was like, well, I just saw a lot of drag queens and was like, I want to do that, and they're like, well, that's not what this is. And she's like, okay, I guess I'll do burlesque.
Yeah.
Like, great. So she's incredible. She's super funny. I would definitely recommend go watch some of her YouTube videos of her act. She has just like, again, just like classic stuff, but like wacky. Like they're just like, there's a lot of things where like there's very like cliche act of like people be like, I'm a swan because swans are beautiful and lovely, and like no they're not. So Dirty Martini was like, no they're fucking not. So she has a swan number where like her own arm is a swan and starts like getting at her, and it's so funny. It's so well thought out. It's a beautiful like arm piece that she has. So it's like, it's pretty, but it's like ridiculous because like a fucking bird is eating her, and it's great.
That's true. Swans are dicks.
Swans are dicks. Be careful about swans. They'll drown you. They'll drown your kids.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if a swan drowned me, I think I deserved it, because I should be able to take a swan. But yeah, small children, dogs, they're assholes.
They're gonna get them. But
That is, wow. I guess I've never really thought about because everybody knows the idea of burlesque. I've just never really thought about it as like this underground, like sort of scene before. Is there festivals kind of popping up? Because I feel like that style, like that 1920s style, is kind of coming back 100 years later. Like in the electronic music scene, like electro swing is like getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where like Electric Forest is dedicating an entire part of their festival to electro swing, and it's just like I feel like the two kind of go hand in hand. Like the pinup model, the swing music, burlesque, like all of that. Is it slowly growing in that way, or are you like?
Oh, big time, yeah.
Okay.
I'm really hoping that, yeah. I mean, it's like kind of like a silly vibe that like everyone's hyped about, like Gatsby, like that movie hit again. Everyone's like, we're throwing Gatsby parties all the time, which I'm like, okay, but it really
people
benefits.
love like old school like murder mystery parties or whatever.
Get hyped and like I want to roll my eyes, and I'm like, I do love it too. I get it. It's fun. It's a fun aesthetic.
Yeah.
So no, I hope that steam doesn't die out, because it's definitely been benefiting, the clubs and like everything here. People like want to have, and especially I think that again the pandemic just really made people much more conscious of like how valuable a live experience is.
Sure.
And how fleeting like those high energy moments can be, and just like I think people are really thirsty to go out and have like that wild, extravagant night, and burlesque definitely delivers on that, where it's like you're gonna come away with like something to talk about on Monday for sure. Like you're gonna have an incredible fun birthday or bachelorette or whatever it is, for sure.
There we go. If that wasn't a good pitch, I don't know what is.
Go see a show.
Awesome. Did I miss anything? Is there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't touch on?
I don't know. Would you ever consider doing burlesque?
I don't think I'd ever do it. I think I get my creative energy out on stage. I'm also not a very like physical person. I don't think I'm like not a great dancer.
Because that's my thing. It's like people will be like, I don't know how you do it, and I'm like, I don't know. I would
go to a show. I think about it in the same way that like some people are athletic, some people just aren't athletic. It's just like some people can dance, and some people just like somewhat your brain is wired differently, your muscles are wired differently, and it's just like, nah, I don't think I could pull off burlesque. But well, awesome. This was a ton of fun. How about this? How about say those two names again that people should go look up, and then say where you're going to be at. Like you've got your show at the Pair, Instagram, whatever, and then yeah.
Okay, cool. Again, I mean, people know Dita Bonte's. I don't know, look her up if you want.
Okay.
She's got enough money. Go look up Dirty Martini. She's incredible. She performs all around New York. She's really wonderful. Go check out a show at like the Slipper Room. House of Yes is an incredible
I have heard good things about
club
House
/ dance, beautiful.
There's a lot of things that go on at House of Yes.
It's a church of art and drag and dance, and it's wonderful. Go check out the House of Yes. They have an incredible show every single night. It's something different. I don't know. Barsham Folly, Susan Barsh runs a cool show that I don't know if it's still happening or not, but if it's happening somewhere, look it up, because you've got people like doing opera while pole dancing type stuff.
Oh, wow.
Very, very fun. It's a whole world. Just Google burlesque in your town. They've got it. Whatever small town you're from, I promise they have a burlesque troupe. Like that's the thing. It's growing.
You're gonna recognize everyone from church, but they're there.
They're there. They're getting their lives. That's great.
So what's your Instagram? What are your shows?
I am. Okay. Wait. This is the part where I don't know which Instagram to say, because I have. That's the whole thing. Is like
Let's go with both.
Go with both?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
I'll put them both in the show notes, unless you don't want me to.
That's the thing. I'm still deciding. Because
okay.
With like comedy, I made a whole new Instagram because I was like, because I used like a fake name, because that was the whole thing in Athens. Was like, it was a small troupe, it's a small town, and she was like, you have to use a different name. You got to have a wig and you got to have eyelashes on every time you're doing a show. Don't show up with your hair, because people are going to come to your work the next day and be like, you're that girl. And we just don't want people following you home. And I'm like, oh, okay. So she got me very in my head about like the safety of it.
Okay.
And like how, and like, again, like I said, it's kind of like a superhero thing of like you put on your hair and like you've got this different name. So I don't know.
All right, so let's do the comedy one. If you want me to put the other one in the show notes, then I will. You guys can check there.
Okay.
But yeah, your comedy one is just...
comedy one is Pilar Har Har. It's Pilarharhar.
Easy. I'll put it in there. And then your shows are every Thursday and Friday at 6 p.m.
Yes.
At the Grizzly Pear with Graham Cooper, who's done this podcast 3 times. So yeah, come. I've also done the show a couple times. It's super fun.
It's a fun time.
Yeah, Friday 6 o'clock. People are like just starting to drink.
Take your
It's
night
a good
off,
time.
happy hours going.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for doing this. This was a lot of fun. I feel like I learned like so much this episode.
Yeah, I can talk forever about this shit. Go see some boobies. It's the best thing. You won't regret it. It's the best time.
There you go. You heard it here first. All right. I'll talk soon.